supposed to take the makers off the table, but it's too late now. Might as well take a sip.
I did not see that coming.
Oh my
God.
God.
It's the lore. It's the mystique of it all.
We're still doing it. We haven't been cut off yet.
Oh, shit. Good job, buddy. Nice job, Daniel. Good job, man. Keep that rod bent. Keep that rod bent.
I mean, people used to get so scared of them, they had to shoot them.
Yeah, that's true.
But because you literally can't stop thinking about it. You know, you can't scratch the itch enough.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Spot Burn Podcast. You have your hosts, Dan and BamBam, in the house. Say hello, Daniel.
Hi, everybody.
How's everybody doing out there? Say, folks, we got a fun one in store today. We're going to go over the 8 hot tips for catching more muskies. Now, these aren't just any old tips.
Sounds like some clickbait here.
Yeah, these are our 8 tried and true, no BS tips that we wanted to talk about today. Dive in depth a little deeper here. An old take on some, or a new take on some old perspectives, and we're gonna probably drop some gold nuggets in there as we go along as well.
So this isn't going to be AI generated fake 8 tips, is what you're telling me? These are the real deal. These are the real deal.
We might have started with the AI to build the framework, and then we had to
trash it right away. Yeah, don't worry. ChatGPT's not catching muskies anytime soon. She's lost.
Genuine 8 tips, folks.
Genuine.
All right, let's get into it, Daniel.
Let's do it.
Tip number 1, have the right gear. Fly rods. Dan, tell us about fly rods.
So, this is where the generic advice is going to tell you something about the weights of rods you need to have, 10 to 12, and yes, that's everywhere. I think what's below the line that's important, that gets overlooked, and are the details that you won't hear everywhere, a couple things. First, if you want to get like a real deep dive on musky fly rods, go check out our video we just posted a few weeks ago, Musky Fly Rod Review 2024. We talk about all of the musky fly rods. It's pretty sweet. But what we look for is something that I would call a true musky fly rod. And you're going to separate these from just all your 10 to 11 to 12 weights. We're now in a world where we have true musky fly rods. We got a lot of options. Pick one of those. And you'll notice there's just differences in the blank, a little bit more power in the butt, a little bit bigger grip to help you with all those, figure eights, two-hand casting, all sorts of stuff like that. I think that's piece number 1. Piece number 2, and we're back. Things like ferrules, how many pieces it is, 1, 2, 4 piece. Those ultra specific musky rods, usually 2-piece, 3-piece. Those are nice to have. Minimize the ferrules, and then looking at those guides. So that's, to me, when I think about the right fly rod, we get that question. What should I get? I have an 8 weight that I use a little bit for this, a little bit for that. I got a 9. That'll work. But if you want the right rod, I think look for a musky rod. It's probably 10, 11, 12. But it's a true musky rod. It's got maybe 2-piece, 3-piece, maybe ceramic guides, maybe a longer grip, some things like that. So that's what separates, I think, most of the generic advice from something more specific. It's going to help you a lot. Mm-hmm. What about fly line?
Fly line, extremely important. Arguably the most important. This is your lifeline to the fish. Do not skimp on the fly line. The fly line, it's the workhorse of the whole cast, because this is the line that's responsible for turning over those leaders and those flies. And it's going to do whatever you want it to do. Do you want to have that fly way deep in the water column? Mm-hmm. Do you want it shallow? But I know what I would like in a fly line, something that's durable and very reliable.
Yeah, it does. It does drive so much. Like, your fly can be awesome, but if you have the wrong fly line, it might not be getting to the right spot. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to go through all the gear. I think we got 5 here for have the right gear. And we specifically called out 5 that are ultra important. They bubble up to the top of the list. Number 3.
Nets.
So, I mean, have a net, I think, is the, and size matters. It's not time to go grab your dad's old bass net.
No.
It's kind of, I don't want to say that there's a financial burden to fishing for muskies, but I think there is. You don't just kind of go out and shoot a deer and not have any idea what you're going to do with it. And I think there's something there with muskies. We're obviously not killing them or shooting them, but having a net is kind of that pony up, If you are going to say you're going musky fishing, you should have a net with you. And I think we all believe that. And I think it aids in letting those fish go. So important to have a true musky net. If you think it's too big, it's probably not too big.
Yep. The material on the net, that matters as well.
Good call.
Not all nets are created equally. You would like to have a net that has a good material. They're typically coated. It's going to be easier on the fish. It's going to be easier to get your lures and your flies out of it as well. And when that fish ultimately gator rolls, that's going to clog things up if you have an old rat's nest net. So make sure that thing's in good working condition, because that's the little sanctuary you're going to be able to extract that hook out of and be able to deal with that fish properly.
Yeah, that's like one of those pieces of gear too. If it's not in ripe shape or it gets left behind or it's got a hole in it, it's a day ruiner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you have a folding net, like Dan said, make sure that thing unfolds very efficiently and quickly, because in the heat of the moment, that can be the last place you want to figure out it doesn't open up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, haven't cleaned that out in a while.
Yeah. Yep. Tools.
This one gets said fairly obviously, but we're going to just hammer it home. Probably the most important if you plan on catching muskies. If you don't have tools and a net with you, you might as well fish with hookless flies or hookless baits. But tools. Keep them accessible. Have backups. Hook cutter, long, big pliers, and jaw spreader, I think, are the bare minimum. Make sure you have them. Make sure they work. Make sure you know where they are.
Good call. Last on our list for have the right gear, camera. Whether you're shooting on an iPhone or a mirrorless camera, that's something that's pretty handy, because you want to be able to capture those moments when they happen on the water. We get a very small amount of time to deal with these fish, and the last thing you want to do is when someone hooks the fish of a lifetime is not be ready with a camera to capture that moment. A couple tips on that is, before you even get on the water, if you have a mirrorless camera or DSLR or whatever, get your settings dialed in so they're already ready to go. So when those flies start hitting the water, that camera's ready to rumble. Keep it at the ready, keep it safe. Same thing with the iPhone. Make sure you know how to use that thing properly. There's also settings in there too, and practice with like portrait mode and other things like that.
Especially in tournament settings, you don't want to be that guy that takes a picture of your buddy's tournament fish and has the iPhone on selfie mode or something.
Oh, that gives me anxiety.
Josh, was the camera on for that, or did I press the wrong button?
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's the truth. All right, tip number 2. This is a juicy one. So I guess when and where is the magic sauce is what the tip is. Tell me, Josh, in your opinion, like how important is when and where in terms of catching muskies? Right spot, right time.
Man, best times is any time you can go fishing. Sometimes it's not going to be scientifically the ideal conditions, but it's the time you got, so you got to make the most of it. If you do find yourself in a position that you can line up your schedule with times, look at if you're fishing high pressured areas such as popular lakes or really popular rivers that get a lot of pressure. Those fish are probably tuned into pretty small bite windows. So look at moon phases. Look at the minors, the majors. If there's a new moon, a full moon happening, that can play into your favor. And then also the weather. If you're experiencing a lot of like follows during the bluebird days, maybe your window then becomes on the front side or the back side of a big storm system.
I would agree with all of that. 100%.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's also, if you look at most serious musky anglers that are at the top of their game, so nobody at this table, but
no.
This seems to be what you obsess about the most. And I think of it on 2 spectrums. You have the when and where at like a high level, spring, fall, lakes, rivers, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And then you have the when and where, like in the moment. When should we be where tomorrow?
Yes.
Where are we going to pick tomorrow? We're here in southern Wisconsin. And you kind of got to make both of those decisions. Sometimes you live in a certain spot, you're only able to get out as much as you can. So your where is kind of dictated by those circumstances. So then you got to be really specific on where, when's the best time to go. I'm stuck with where. I live in, southern Wisconsin or northern Illinois or Iowa. So when do I go?
Yeah.
When are the best times to get them?
Pick your time and pick the spot on the spot.
Yep. And then underneath that hood is what you were talking about, which is like the micro when and where.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have weather conditions. Where is that going to put the fish on the lake? When is that storm rolling in? Oh, when and where. It's just kind of on repeat when you think about it. So that's if you're not focusing on that and you're not catching fish, I think maybe the tip is kind of go back to the drawing board and think of it through when and where, not just solar lunar, not just weather, not just. That's the puzzle I think we're always trying. We were just talking about it over on the couch for like an hour.
Yep.
When and where was basically our conversation. So,
yep.
When and where is the magic sauce?
All right. Tip number 3, the business end, AKA the leader. Importance of the right leader. Dan, what do you got to talk about for leaders here?
It's one of those tips that's like, it's so simple it shouldn't be a tip, but it's so important it has to be a tip.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you mess this part up, it's going to go south often and fast. But it's not a thing we think about all the time. I'm not constantly going up, falling asleep at night thinking about how to dial in my leader better. It's good. I might be thinking about, hey, I'm going to replace all my leaders before I start fishing tomorrow because they've been on there for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not losing sight of how the leader performs and this thing and that's way more reserved for the flies and our presentation and our lines. So leader, we don't really overcomplicate it once the system is in place. What's the system look like? We don't skimp on materials. This is kind of an extension of your fly line. There's no sense in using cheap stuff. Yeah, I know fluorocarbon's expensive, but look at what else you've already bought from Muskies. You're going to skimp on the $9 mono versus the $25 fluoro? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Fluorocarbon butt sections, wire leader, wire tippet, or wire all the way. I really don't understand an application for fluorocarbon tippet. We've said it before. We'll say it again. The diameter is thinner on wire. It performs better. It doesn't get bitten off. It's not ever part of the reason I don't think we're catching them.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. 30-pound plus on the wire. We've actually talked about it on a previous podcast because it was a user. Why do I keep saying user? It was an audience member question about leaders, and we kind of got into some detail about the different types to set those up. There are different ways. They all work at the end of the day. Most of them are fluorocarbon and wire.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the business end. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, but always be checking. If there is anything up, if there's anything amiss with my leader, I am swapping it out immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Good on leader. Anything to add, fella?
I think
that's a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah, I mean, just inspect that puppy too. As I get older and I've lost some big fish in my day, I'm kind of a stickler for fresh leaders, especially if you're serious about this game and you're fishing at spots that have known big fish. There is such a small room for error. So the cost of materials to build a new leader is totally worth it. Take the extra time, make yourself a new leader.
100%. All right. Tip number 4, efficient cast. Efficient cast. What does that mean?
Techniques to improve efficiency. So
why do we care about efficiency so much?
I
think maybe we're either the worst people to talk about this or probably two of the best people to talk about this because at any given moment we can't use our right arms.
Yeah.
Why is efficiency so important, Josh?
It's important to stay in the game. So you're not just a warm body out on the boat. You're actually hunting actively, and your brain is focused, your body's focused, you're doing everything that you need to do, and you can only do that if you're not injured and you're not tired. So to mitigate that, you try to get a really efficient cast. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. That stripping hand, usually your non-dominant hand in the double haul scenario, or even some of this two-handed casting stuff, that's arguably more important than your dominant hand. Your dominant hand already knows what to do. It's your dominant hand. It's got a lot of muscle memory into it. You don't even have to think about it. But that double hauling hand, or even that, if you're doing a two-handed cast, that butt section hand, that's doing a lot of the extra heavy lifting. Totally. And that takes a little bit more brain power. So really focus on what that non-dominant hand is doing, and that'll help make your cast a lot more efficient.
And I think if you're really feeling it on your right hand and you don't have the power and it hurts and it feels like a lot of work, your left hand probably needs to be doing a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Spot on about that one.
Yep. Letting line out on the back of your cast, not just on the front. You see a lot of beginner anglers when they're making the cast, they only think they can let line out on the front side. So what ends up happening is they have to do, double. 2 or sometimes 3 or 4 more false casts just to get some more line out. If you just think about it, like you want both of those front and back casts to be equal, you can get a lot more efficiency if you're letting line out on the front and you're letting a bunch more out on the back, and then boom, you can load that rod up. So some of the best casters you see out there, sometimes they're doing as little as 1 false cast even, but generally no more than 2 false casts before they can launch a decent amount of fly line out.
I mean, this is where I think about it like this. What are muskies called? Fish of 10,000 casts. That saying was for conventional fishermen.
Yeah.
Who make 1 cast per cast.
That's a good way to think about it.
Fly anglers can make how many false casts per cast?
So if you're
really good, 2. So we're automatically fish of 20,000 casts.
That's a good point.
And that's if you're good. 30,000, 40,000. It's pretty easy to, play with those numbers a little bit.
It racks up.
Efficiency matters.
Yes, sir.
Both, I think you're right. It's both like efficiency in the technique so you don't hurt yourself, and efficiency in the technique and the delivery so you don't have to do it that often.
Yep.
Minimize the false cast to maximize the distance.
Yep.
It's tough to do, but it takes some practice, but it can be done for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that leads us to the next one. Strive for 2 false casts, no more than 3. Next one, load the rod. These rods are meant to expend or, absorb and then ultimately produce a ton of energy. And you're only doing that if you're loading it properly. A lot of beginner fly casters, they're trying to throw that line too much, or almost like they're rushing the cast and their arm is doing the majority of the work. Be patient. Let that line totally load up that rod. You'll feel it. And then when it's ready to go, you just get all that energy transferred back into the line and gun that cast out.
For sure. This is where those dedicated musky rods too, you're going to feel the difference because they have a springboard way deep in the butt of the blank that's meant for the big heavy cast.
Mm-hmm.
Not really getting a lot out of the tip section, and you got to load that up to feel the power.
Mm-hmm. Next one, film yourself casting. We all, for the most part, have phones that have cameras on them. We're totally capable of filming. So get yourself a little cheapo Amazon or whatever tripod, or set your phone up, and you can even put on the slow-mo feature and break down your cast. Try to see what you're doing wrong, what you can improve on. If you're self-conscious about seeing yourself on film, just have a buddy come watch you. Give you some pointers.
It's like going to the driving range. Speaking of,
yes.
Do you think we could have a driving range but for casting?
Oh.
Like a play, like you could target cast and work on.
That would be so fun, like a Top Golf, but for fly anglers.
Gosh.
Like a triple or quadruple story, and they'd have popcorn and nachos. And
imagine how silly it would be if it was a triple decker and there's 60 anglers and they're all just casting rope at the same time and you just drive past it on the freeway.
And you're thinking,
what are they doing? It wouldn't have to be as big as a golf driving range. Yeah, you wouldn't have to mow and cut the grass. You wouldn't hit the cart guy.
Dang.
Cool. Next idea, folks.
Next
Be ready. Common mistakes on the cast. Do you have any common mistakes that pop up?
Yeah, as said before, rushing the cast. That's a big one. People just get so anxious, especially like what I've seen the most is, well, to begin with, they're doing like 4 or 5 false casts, but the first 3 are damn near perfect. And then they get so excited about that last one, they just rush it and the whole thing just falls apart.
Yeah.
So really be patient and let that rod tell you when it's ready to unleash it.
Yep. I think it's also like, it goes back to your multiple for when you said like they're doing 4 to 5 casts. A common mistake that I can't is like, it's like the angler that's doing the 5 or 6 false casts thinks that it's going to get better as they do more. They just have to find the right cast. Mm-hmm. And I think what we all know as good casters is that like my cast gets worse the more that fly line's in the air. Simply put, like unless you're really paying attention to it, which I'm not because I'm just trying to fish. Yep. Your cast gets worse. It's not because, oh, I'm Josh, I'm mighty strong, I can do 12 false casts. It's like, no, physics is against us. We're just, the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. And I think people get confused on that because they're like, no, I know you told me to cast less, but I'm like, I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better. You keep trying. Might as well put the thing down, strip it back in, and start over.
Yeah, exactly, Dano. Another thing is, we touched on this a little bit before, the forward and the back cast aren't equal. A lot of people, they got a really strong forward cast. They come to a good acceleration and then an abrupt stop, and then their back cast is really flimsy and limpy, and it's like a soft stop. So they got this good haul going forward, and then it just all falls apart on the back end, and now they have to make up for lost ground again on that forward cast. So you're just losing all of that power and efficiency doing it that way. Really spend some time. If you have to, bring that rod back down horizontal so you can see what's actually happening with the fly line and the rod, and just practice making sure each of those casting strokes is even.
Or backhand. You'll feel it because you're really backhand. You're just making the opposite. Your back cast is your forward cast. Your forward cast is now your back cast, and that'll kind of get some muscle memory of like, oh, you're right. I'm doing one of the 2 sides.
Yep. Lastly, for this section, flailing arms. This is not good for the old shoulder or elbow. Wing. Yeah, so you get this flailing arm out here that's doing all sorts of stuff. It's putting a weird trajectory in your fly line and your rod and everything like that. It's not good. You don't want your hand and your wrist to be doing this big old arc either. That thing, if you guys are watching at home, you want that thing to be going in a straight line.
You can even do the golf trick too. Like I did this when I played golf. You put a golf glove under your armpit.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got to keep it there. Keep it, you can use whatever you need because it kind of goes with another one, which is just like the body movement. Like when these all weave together, when you're really loading the rod, reducing the flailing arms, you're also trying to reduce, like there should be no lower body movement. And you see that a lot, especially gets exposed in like rafts where literally you can see the boat shaking back and forth as they go back and forth. And if you watch some, I don't move my feet. I don't want to move anything but just a little bit of my arms, and it's about getting that line to load the rod to do all of it for me. Otherwise, we really don't have a chance.
100%.
So it's all of that stuff. But that's another diagnosis is like what you're saying, the flailing arm. If you're recording yourself, flailing arm, you're moving a lot. You'll see this now, again, we're talking about Musky because if you look at like experienced Olympian, whatever, competition casters, to deliver that type of setup that far, they have to do a lot of opening their body up. We're not doing any of that. That's way too much casting for us. We have way too much weight in the fly. Like the whole cast is different. We are not trying to cast that much. I'm trying to basically go like from a figure 8 to 15 feet to maybe 20 feet, 30, 80.
Yeah.
I'm not going 10, 15, 25, 35, 45, 85. I'm not doing this. I'm not trying to get a perfect loop. I'm not doing any of that. So a little bit of my soapbox there, I guess. But yeah, those are good tips.
I like that explanation though, like the distances on your first front, your second back.
It actually reminds me of when we were talking about this. I think you said like what are some of the most common mistakes, and you mentioned and I think it's a good one. It's that like transition in the cast. I think a lot of people lose sight that like our cast is actually this kind of continuous circle where you fire it out, you strip it in, you do your figure eight, and you go right from a figure eight into the back cast. And if you take that transition and do it right and use that as an opportunity to load the rod and shoot some line, that is actually the key to reducing false casts.
Yeah.
Because with these big rods and these heavy flies, and when you don't have a lot of line out because you just figure eighted next to the boat, you do kind of have to do the like 2, 3, 4, 5 to get enough line shooting out. If you're not doing what your tip was when we talked about this, which is that transition. You're in a figure eight. You've finished your figure eight. The fly's in the water. You can use that as an opportunity to sweep. Use the lever or the pull from the water, sweep back. And this goes for if you're double hauling, if you're two-handing, honestly, even if you're water loading, sweep back, get some line out right away. Right away on that first cast back, there should almost be 10 feet at least an entire rod's worth of fly line. And then you kind of have enough to 1, 2, down.
Love it.
Long one, but
That's
I think
great.
there's a lot of emphasis on that. We sure spend a lot of time casting out there.
Yep. All right. On to tip number 5. This is a fun one. Mental toughness. Staying focused while you're fishing.
You're looking at me.
Yeah, Dan. Tell us about mental toughness. How do we stay focused?
This will be an exercise, and you'll learn what not to do. No, this is real, man. This is real, and I think it doesn't actually you kind of get this like fish of 10,000 casts, and we don't talk about it. And it's like you need to prepare yourself. You're going to get after this. It always happens out of the gates, and then you're going to deal with it continuously as long as you're chasing muskies. Mental toughness. There is no way around the fact that you usually have to put in a lot of time. Hours, days, plan trips, be in the right spot, focus on the where and when, get your efficient cast down, and then you're out there and you're doing it for 8 hours and nothing's happened and you lose focus. And that is killer. It eats at all of us. That's what I'm kind of like snapping myself in and out of constantly throughout the day, you know, and this is the thing I love, but it's really easy to be looking over there and talking to your buddy a little bit too in depth, and you know, you may be just pulling that fly back, but lazily, you're not hunting it. But that was the 1 minute you were in the right spot, and you didn't. There's too many what ifs to not be focused, and I think a lot of people you fish with, even good anglers in other domains, they come into the musky boat, and you can just tell it's like, you might get lucky, but you're not really. Mm-hmm. You're at like a 4, and you need to be at like a 9 when it comes to dialed and riled. You need to just be like obsessive. Doesn't mean that you're not going to catch fish just having fun. It doesn't mean we're not having fun out there when we're focused, but shit, we work really hard. We spend a lot of money. You go on guide trips and rent cabins and all this stuff, and you want to be focused. Mm-hmm. One tip under there that is like literally what we're doing is we are surveying around the fly constantly and just always keeping our wits about us. And even if like my fly is finished or I'm in the mid cast, I might be glancing at Josh's fly as he brings his fly back, and just, you know, we're always, what was that? You're always wondering because the data is not there. It's not readily available. So we're always looking to be cognizant of what's going on. And those can be moments that make or break. You know, I saw a flash, I did a figure 8. You know, the other day I was out, I just had a very minimal slack line feel. Did I slip through my fingers? Was that something? But I hunted it right away, and sure enough, there was a fish right behind it, follow. So I think those things, a lot of success for me personally and a lot of mistakes for me personally come back to focus. Mm-hmm. Was I focused? Was I not focused? Those are the moments. Yep. The second piece of that is kind of overcoming the challenges, the slumps, the heartbreak, fish get off. I think slumps are usually a little bit harder to overcome because there's actually some positive feedback in fish getting off. You caught it. When you're just not seeing any, not having any feedback, that gets really difficult. I think this is also why the focus comes back in, is because we want to have fun because it's going to be really hard, type 2 fun, but I'm not having as much fun musky fishing if I'm not focused. I kind of feel like I'm wasting my time. I'm going to make a mistake. Things that will help this: have buddies, maybe therapists. We all suck. We're all wondering. We're all, the guy on social media who caught 20. You can't let it beat you up because there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of different forces at play. I think it's just you gotta do what you gotta do. And if you're having a really bad dry spell, try something else. Maybe go fish for the food that muskie eat and see if you can catch them. And maybe go bass fishing a little bit. It's not the end of the world. I think this is where the slump sometimes seems like it's more related to golf yips than it is like. That's why you almost need the break, and why we're talking about this under mental toughness is you got to be aware of that because your brain's going to play tricks on you throughout the day, throughout the trip, throughout the season. I don't know. I want to go over here, but I think we should go over here. I want to fish this place, but we ended up fishing this place. And I think a lot of that's mental. I know when I've had those bouts, it feels like I'm in my own head about it. I'm taking it too seriously. I'm not taking it seriously enough. And just got to kind of just reset, find a balance. Mm-hmm. Mental toughness. What do you got to add, Josh?
Yeah, just trusting the process. It's going to happen when it happens. And so you just have to always maintain that laser focus. If you're not focused, then what are you doing out there? Sit down, take a breather. No one's going to get on your case too bad about it. If you have to row a boat. If you want to just sit there and run a trolling motor, do that. Grab some chips, get some water. Do some light yoga.
Yeah, I feel like we do that without even saying it. We're like, when we take a break, we take a break. Because we're not the in-between. You're on or off. And we might take a break. Like, we might be like, fuck, that was a long 6 hours. Let's go beach the boat for an hour and chill out.
Yep.
And then get back after it.
One thing I see a lot in the rivers, too, is we're going down the river so quickly at such a rapid speed. They're constantly thinking the grass is greener on the other side. So, they're not even finishing their full cast and they're already looking back over their shoulder to the next spot. It's very important to not rush that process. Get that fly all the way back to the boat, do your boatside etiquette and all your good stuff there. Then when you're ready, pick up that fly with your eyes on it the whole time because you'll get a lot of strikes even that way. So once that fly is finally out of the water, now you can swivel your head and check out where your next cast is going to be. Don't rush that when you're going down the river.
Totally. It reminds me of I think it was Steve's clients that would fish looking away from the fly the whole time and like banged him up. And that had a lot to do with what we're talking about, the focus. Like they knew they struggled with it. So their strategy was to like not just look away the whole time. And it worked.
It worked
for them.
Good.
It worked for them. Not suggested, but it worked.
Yeah.
All right. Tip number six. Fish with confidence. Easier said than done. So two sides of this equation, I think. How important is confidence? What's the impact of confidence on your fishing? Success and mistakes? And then how do you, if you have no confidence, if you haven't caught a muskie on a fly, how do you accumulate confidence? And how do you maintain confidence?
Yeah, those are all tough things. Some might even argue that confidence is the most important non-tangible piece of gear you can bring on a fishing trip. You just have to know that you're in a spot with muskies. You've done everything in your power to catch that fish. And all you can do is look at that fly and hunt it like it's a dying bait fish. Work that fly. Always staying focused on that fly and that presentation. And ultimately it's gonna happen for you. You might not catch that first muskie that ever eats your fly, but that's still a good skill set that you just developed that you can use for your next encounter. So these are all little building blocks to get you to your first muskie. And I will be the first to admit the first one on the fly is the toughest to overcome. Sometimes it takes people years to get their first one. But man, the amount of confidence you get after that first one, it kind of just shoots through the roof.
Almost overconfident.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm top of the world. I mean, honestly, you get a little bout of that every time you get a big one.
Yep.
It's interesting. It's like I think about it a lot because I'm an overthinker, so I overthink about it a lot. But it's not just like pure confidence. There's always just like a little bit of a swagger, or just a someone's got the energy. And I think there's like this balance between carefree and over determined, and it seems like hard to find. What I'm trying to say is it's just this like relaxed focus. And I think you do get there from, putting in the 10,000 hours, because you're not thinking about your cast anymore. You're not dissatisfied with how your fly swims. You've probably, all those things start to wash away, and now you're just in the moment, in the Zen state of like hunting, and thinking about, and really like, what was that? What was that noise? That bait fish over there. Should we bump off? You're just like, you can't even break it. Nothing. And like, I think that relates to confidence. Focus and confidence are kind of intertwined. But yeah, man, building it on your first one. I don't know. I mean, I think if you really think about it, it feels like the first. There's like, again, we go back to two groups. It's like the people that catch them right away. First one, done. Got them right away.
Yep.
And then like the people that struggle through it. The people that struggle through it, they have a bout of confidence issues because they got no positive feedback. Then they get one, and that's a huge rush. I feel like the people that just get them out of the gates, like it's not even a confidence issue at that. They don't even know. The confidence issue comes later.
Yeah. Yeah. Then they find out the hard way after that first one.
Where the people that, have worked 2 years for their first one, or a year, they're well aware of what the fuck is going on, and that this is not going to be easy, and that they need to go get confidence. Shit. Yeah. What about maintaining it? Like, even now, do you kind of go through that in and out of a season of just like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. Oh, I just feel like I got the groove.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that? Do you try and seek it? Do you just chill out about it?
There's been ebbs and flows throughout the years, different seasons. I felt a lot more confident throughout the whole season. And like last year, I felt like that was kind of a rough year for me personally. So you're just losing confidence, but at the end of the day, yeah, you just got to trust.
Says the guy that caught one on opening day last year and December 31st.
And the last day of the season. But there was a big lull in the middle.
I know.
For
but
sure.
Kind of an interesting fact. You can't probably say that you've done that many years before.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, you reflect on previous seasons and previous catches. You look at flies in your box that have been tried and true warriors for you in the past, and that'll help get your confidence up. Another thing that helps me is I go to pretty high density fisheries where I know there's a pretty good likelihood I'm going to have several encounters that day. That definitely helps get confidence back up. So they may not be monsters, but they got the right paint job, and I had a ton of fun doing it. Sometimes they can even use a smaller fly rod in the process, and it's just a fun outing, and that helps get your confidence back up.
Yep, I agree. I think it's also it's this like story you have to tell yourselves. I mean, think of where we're at right now. We have not listened to any of our own advice. We haven't gone to any high probability areas so far this season.
Nope.
We're in pursuit of something else. It almost feels like we're starting over.
Yeah.
Because we're learning newer water every time we go out, at least in so far this season, most of the time. And low probability. So it just feels like it's like lonely, and it kind of reminds me of back to the beginning of like, I don't know anything about what's going on. And I think I'm doing that. I'm reminding myself of what we're doing. I'm reminding myself of previous eats, reminding myself of, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's, maybe dabble with a little bit of those low or high density fisheries, but generally keep your eye on the prize. Tell that story. Like, this is what we're doing. It's not going to be easy. We've had action. We're close, like you kind of have to keep doing that. Otherwise, and that might be in a similar position, just starting out 3 years in, 2 years in, you spent all this money on gear. You're like, what am I doing? My partner keeps asking why I go out catching fish and don't come home with any catches, I think that's how I think about it.
Yep.
It's all mental right there. And then the good news is this shit snowballs. Your confidence level rises considerably with every encounter and catch, like you were saying earlier. It's all learning.
Yep.
So you just got to get minutes. That's the key.
Yes, definitely. Man, and you're going to lose some big ones that are going to be absolute heartbreaks. But you'll remember the details of that brief encounter, like whether it's 20 to 40 seconds you were fighting that fish. Maybe you were lucky enough that a buddy was even filming it, and you can, you know, when you're ready to review the footage, you could see, you know, maybe next time this happens 5 years from now, I'll be in a better position to get a better strip set, or I'll be more aggressive with bringing that fish's head up, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this goes in, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but it was a super good transition. It goes into the next tip, which is team sport.
Team sport.
We'll talk about some of what we have down here, but what you were saying made me think of this because I think about two of the real big fish that were lost, hooked and lost over the last, call it 3 years. One recently and one about 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And as a group, we have dissected and debriefed and post-mortemed that and discussed each of those significantly. Individually, sidebar, and it's kind of like this shared brain of like, what do you think? Why did that come off? You know, and without casting blame. I mean, even if there was, like, who, you know, Dan fucked that one up. But that's still a learning moment of like, when we're trying to, I think, grab onto any of those that we can. And that's why having a team sport, it's one of the aspects that's not on here, but it is, it should be. Mm-hmm. The shared knowledge makes it a lot easier. When you're just out there all by yourself, I've been there. It's a lot lonelier. It's a lot quieter. You know, you only got one fly in the water at the time. So it definitely helps if you can find a partner or multiple partners. But that was kind of ruined it. But number 7 is team sport.
Team sport. Benefits of fishing with a partner. Well, in a raft scenario, you can consolidate gear, which is very handy. One person brings the extraction tools. One person brings leader making materials, or maybe you got them all in one box, so you only bring that. I can
steal Josh's flies.
Dan can steal my flies. You can consolidate gear. Clean up your boat.
Yep. I think the other thing here too, I just got to say it because personally, this is probably one of the reasons I love musky fishing more than anything else, and come back to it more than anything else in like my outdoor pursuits. Let me put it that way, in case you're listening, Jen and Lucy. But I mean, like, compared to hunting, compared to other types of fishing, is because it really depends, and relies on the team sport. Mm-hmm. You don't really team hunt deer. Yeah, you might have scouted together, you might do a deer drive, but like, you're alone in the woods for a long time. And I get alone time in other sorts of fishing, trout fishing, we kind of go separate ways. Musky, it's a team sport. Like, I literally depends on it. If I'm out there by myself, hooked into a 58 with a fly rod, my chance of success in landing that fish, let alone catching it, just getting the boat in the right position, fishing with confidence, is so much lower than if I have 1 or 2 people with me who know how to fish, can operate a boat, can net a fish. Like, it just, I almost probably, I'd honestly say I'd be hard pressed to, like what we're doing next week, I'd be hard pressed to do that by myself.
Absolutely.
Not because I'm like scared or anything, but I'm just like, dude, this shit goes down, I'm so fucking screwed.
Yeah.
Like, what, you don't want to put yourself in that. And then team sport. So it's not only like a reason for success, but it's like a reason to do it. Mm-hmm. You gotta, it's like a high school sport again. It's kind of fun that way.
Yeah, you're in the trenches with your brothers and sisters, just battling it out with this very elusive creature.
Struggling together.
And everyone's just beaten down over the season. You know, things go on, blah, 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 blah. But when you triumph, it's like, it's this shared joy.
Yep. And you're all involved in it.
It's forged memories, forged experiences.
Oh, and the bad times too. I mean, the shitty grinds, you know, it's like where you get even closer. And I think there's actually some instances where, like, literally what you guys did over Northern Opener, could not do that solo. You literally need another person. I mean, you could, but it's going to be a shit show. You're not going to fish as effectively.
Yeah.
You need another person to row the boat. So there's times where it really kind of is like, no, this is a multiplayer game.
If you ever think you can just take a rowboat out with any old person, just grab somebody off the street who doesn't know how to row and see how that goes for you going down the river.
Generous act of kindness.
Yeah, they They typically have 2 left arms, and you won't be doing much fishing.
If you're lucky, you'll get a kayaker who knows how to row. Mm-hmm. They'll just push you down the river really fast.
That'd be great. Dragging flies around.
Yeah.
So yeah, moral of the story is that boat position is crucial to the mission. That person's job is to keep the boat in the perfect spot so that angler can do their job.
Yep. And even like in the bigger boats with the fancy electronics, it's still like having that third person is huge. You can still do it with 2. Yeah, you can still do it with 2, but third person, they're just dedicated to boat control. I think there's also a piece here that we had, which is like when you look at tips 5 and 6, mental toughness, fish with confidence, how a team sport enables that. You know, maybe it's a shitty day and I'm in a I haven't caught one in a week and I'm bummed, but like you're in a good mood, which brings my mood up, which gives me more confidence.
Yep.
Or I, lose one and there's a little bit of a shared struggle and, and I might be totally beat up about that on my own, but it's better in a group because we're, so I think it kind of aids some of these things. So team sport, try and find some good fishing buddies. Plus, that's like why we're doing this at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's not for the fucking ego trip, who caught the bigger muskie. It's for the memories and the stories and the fun and the people you meet along the way.
Yeah.
Is there a sound effect for that? We're getting a little sappy. I gotta get a tissue. I just love fishing.
And yeah, like another point that you brought up, like the one thing that really separates musky fishing too from other fishing endeavors is like when you're with your solid crew of your friends and everyone was there to witness the fish that you technically, hooked into and you fought and landed. It's not totally your fish. It's the team's fish. And people talk about it like, we caught this fish. That was our muskie, It was a big old team celebration.
It's like one of us was touched, but the rest of us were, which is cool. Tarpon is like that too.
Yep.
And on the flip side, it's kind of like a really healthy mental cleanse when you have 8 of your closest friends with you and they watch you make the biggest mistake of your fishing life. It's like a public flogging and it's healthier that way.
Yes. Yep.
All right, moving on. So tip number 8 was actually in the original draft, tip number 2. But for reasons that you will see very shortly, it had to be tip number 8. And tip number 8 is you must figure 8. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Josh. I know this is kind of our boilerplate advice that it's like right next to the fish of 10,000 casts is to figure 8. But what's what's the real tip here? Do I have to figure 8 on every single cast? How many times? What are we talking about? What's this madness?
Yeah. The simple answer is no, you do not have to figure 8 on every cast.
Tell me more.
And then the simple explanation of that is, well, don't pull that fly out of the water until you are 100% sure there is no muskie behind it. So
easier said than done on that one.
If I'm fishing 9 inches of crystal clear water, I can see everything, I'm not going to figure 8. So I don't have to figure 8 in that scenario, right?
But explain what you would do. How you'd still hunt your fly back
all the way back to the boat. Yeah.
And you're not hunting it the same way if you were going to go into a blind figure 8 and 10 feet of water stained. But you're still like, if the figure 8 is the term for finishing the cast, I feel like we're always finishing the cast in a way.
Yeah. I'm not technically figure 8ing, but I'm always finishing my cast.
Right.
So my eyes are glued to that fly until it is clearly out of the water far enough that a muskie could not eat it. I've actually been in a boat one time.
Oh, this is so crazy.
When a muskie lure was dangling off of a rod and a muskie jumped out of the water and ate it. So that muskie's capable of damn near everything. Now, where I say like I technically don't figure 8, I do other things. My boatside etiquette, finish your cast. Mm-hmm. So what I've enjoyed doing a lot more as of late is instead of going, stripping my line all the way back and transitioning into either an L sweep or a figure 8, I'll stall it out from the boat like 7 feet, because that sometimes is going to trigger a fish that's been following your fly off the bank.
Away from you.
Yep. And
especially on the rivers where it gets shallow at the boat.
And now you have a very little amount of fly line out, but it's straight off your rod tip, and you're set up for a perfect strip set.
Yep. Well, and it goes to, we talked about a few episodes or a couple episodes ago, we were fishing for spring, 1 foot of crystal clear water. Like, if you were figure eighting the way you're picturing a figure eight in your head, you're going to catch weeds on every turn. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit of discretion involved. But I finished the cast. Compare that to a situation when you are going to, like, let me ask it this way. Assume there's no fish involved, because it seems pretty obvious, at least to me, that when there's a fish following my fly, I should keep figure eighting until it either leaves and I'm sure it's gone, or it eats it. So I'm going to figure eight and keep going. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about techniques for that. But what's more interesting to me is at what times when there aren't fish behind your fly are you really doing a good, like, couple to 3 or 4 turns figure eight after the cast?
Yeah. In a perfect world, you're always doing some type of boatside maneuver to ensure that there's not a fish low or behind that fly that's ultimately going to be triggered and eat your fly. So, yeah, I'll bring that rod all the way down, start doing a figure eight, come up on the corner, the first corner, because they usually like to eat in that corners. If I don't see anything there, sometimes at that point, I'll pick the fly up and start casting again, because in that scenario, I'm pretty confident nothing's there. If we're in like a really deep foamy hole, we've caught muskies there recently or in previous years, I might sit there and figure eight for a while. And I've also seen people, when we're in a section where, casting isn't that easy, maybe we're going through, I don't know, maybe we got like
the boat's moving really fast and there's trees.
Moving really fast, there's trees or something. They'll just literally sit there and figure eight next to the boat. Or if like your buddy just had a follow all the way up to the boat, you just dunk your rod down and you start doing like 10 figure eights.
I mean, if I don't have a ton of fly line out and I'm like in a position where I just have and you're just like fish, I'm sticking my rod in the water, because you never know where that thing peels off. We've had that happen. We had that happen in Iowa.
Yep.
Peeled off one, picked up the other one.
3 years ago, I did a total figure eight series on this one cast. I figure eighted. I was looking at my fly. I was totally done. And then I looked up for just an instant, and that's when the fly got smoked. I just had figured eight like 3 or 4 times, and
I think it was like the pause or something. Yeah, that's
never saw the fish.
That's so crazy. I've had some blind ones, like maybe 5, 6 that I can think of, where like certain. It's always on these 2 bodies of water where like I didn't even see it eat. I didn't see it. I felt it and set the hook in an 8. Never saw a flash. It was that my rod was deep, and I saw something maybe to trigger me to do it. I think that's one thing that for sure, no matter where you are, if you see something, there's a little swirl after your fly or a little color change, or your fly kind of does something, I'm going to really focus that figure eight and maybe keep it there. Even if I'm in shallow water, like Josh said, I might just dangle it out there. But I had one that sticks to mind recently where, it was like, I thought it was a weed. Just because I was like I knew we were in a situation where if I went too deep, I was poking the weeds. And I was like, rod tip weed. And then it started head shaking. And then I see gold head shaking. And then there's fish in the net. It's like, so I think the discretion piece, you got to kind of keep your wits about you. I think maybe the rule of thumb is like how far and wide you can see around the fly.
Yeah.
The less and less I can see around the fly, the deeper and deeper I'm in, the more I'm going to figure eight after each cast.
Yep.
Electronics do help here a little bit for those that use them or are on lakes, because they do throw out some occasional signals on figure eights. It doesn't work perfectly, but that helps. But it's kind of weird, and
When in doubt, always err on the side of doing more boat side work, though.
Yep. There's too many fish interactions here. Like Yeah, there's still people I've fished with recently who shall go unnamed who just like they don't even figure eight, and they're like snubbing their nose to it, like they've figured something else out, or like they don't want them. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Yeah,
that's
but
crazy.
Figure eight, it's a little overblown, but hopefully there's some tips under there. We got a bonus tip too, right, Josh?
Bonus tip, yeah. Now that y'all are savage musky slayers, after
hope.
listening to these 8 tips, we couldn't leave you hanging without just briefly talking about
have to, yeah.
probably one of the most important things, and that's releasing muskies. So, tip number 1 on that, you want to minimize their exposure. We're talking about keeping that fish wet, keeping them in the water, keeping their gills moving around. Sometimes just because they're in the net doesn't mean they're actually allowed to breathe because they've gator rolled and they're all tangled like a straitjacket.
Or you got a high net job and the head's out of the water or something like that. Yep.
Yep. Minimize that exposure. A lot of people, they get so excited that they'll have this muskie in the net, and when they're rowing to shore, they're trolling off to like a calmer piece of water. They don't realize it, but they have that muskie's head sticking up out of the water. Keep that thing down in there. Let it breathe.
Mm-hmm. Number 2, have the right tools. That's just, we go back, it was in that earlier tip, but like you won't be able to successfully release muskies unless you have the right tools. And that means you are intentionally, in some ways, killing muskies when you don't, want to. None of us want to.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just, and then also think through. This is like what, honestly, if you're a beginner angler, I would argue this is what should stress you out the most. And I think the people that it does, they kind of are on the right path of learning all of the things to learn about muskies, because out of the gates, they're like most stressed about what do I do when I get one.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't, it's kind of like, there's a way. And I think we've all accumulated those, and it's not always the same, and there's a little bit of reacting to the fish and the size, and that's the situation we have to address right away.
Yep.
Versus we'll be fine.
It's like climbing a mountain and not having a plan on how you're going to get back down.
Someone's dying.
Yeah. Think about it beforehand, folks.
Yeah. And I think it's the one thing that if I could attribute to like most of the grumpiness within the musky community, of the hardcore musky community, it's the lack of this.
Mm-hmm.
Vertical holds, bad releases, bad holds, out of the net too long, flopping on the bottom of the floor, bass gear, shore banging, dragging them on the rocks. All of those things are just about not knowing what to do. And not everyone's going to be perfect. Not everyone is musky fools and obsessed about them like we are, so we just have to accept that fact. But we can know what to do. We can take that responsibility if you're going to call yourself a musky angler.
Hopefully we'll do a video on fish handling in the future.
That's a great idea.
That'd be great. Next one. We're almost done here. Then you can go back to your nice evening or wherever you're at. Get the trouble taken care of early. Get that fly out, untangle the net, untangle the muskie. So immediately assess the situation. See where that fly's at. Is it deep? Is it hanging right outside of the upper mandible? Has that fish gator rolled and it's all tangled up? So once you get a grasp on what the heck's going on, now you can formulate a plan quickly on how to get rid of those big emergency situations. Are you going to have to cut that hook? You're going to have to cut that net?
Mm-hmm.
Figure
that
it
finger,
out.
You never know.
That finger?
Yeah.
Is there a fly stuck in your finger?
And I think that's where it's get the trouble taken care of early, and also try and take a little breather and remain calm. Because I think I've definitely done it where you get one, you're so excited that it's in the net, and you also immediately notice something. It's maybe hung up high in the net, or it's got in a bad spot, and you kind of instinctively just go to do something about it. Meanwhile, you have a fired up muskie with a hook in its mouth and another hook dangling free, and all of the sudden, we know where that goes. Like you just want to be, wait a minute, what should we do? Okay, how am I gonna? Let's cut the back hook, or let's grab the back hook and just kind of act quickly and swiftly, but calm. I think is
very good
especially
point.
Adrenaline's bumping, your heart racing.
Yeah, because you don't want to end up on the wall of fame at the local Hayward clinic.
No, you don't. But yeah, I think it just is feels like it's the most important job. If that's what we're going to do, you know?
Yep.
It's like, what do the bow hunters obsess about? That kill shot. That's the most important job. You can know where they are. You can have the perfect food plots. You can have all this stuff. But if you screw up that, you're just maiming an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are as catch and release fishermen. If we screw up the release part and we just focus on the catch, we're just out there just manslaughter. So I think it's kind of, it gets overlooked. And I think as the sport continues to grow, it's kind of like, seems like the last frontier. We just need to put to bed a little bit and just make sure it becomes standard practice.
Yep.
That's it, folks. 8 tips. We got a little soapboxy at the end, but releasing muskies is important to us. We really hope you liked them. We really hope, there was some juicy stuff in there. Some of it was a glossing over the basics, but I think this was really informed by a lot of questions we get around folks that are really trying to figure it out, and some of the things that we've learned in trying to figure it out by no means have figured it all out, that's for sure. But we had fun. We hope you liked it. Another episode in the books, fellas.
Signing off. Thanks, guys.
See you, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Spot Burn Podcast. Coming to you from the dungeon, this podcast is presented by Musky Fool Fly Fishing Co. We want to thank our awesome sponsors, Cortland Line Company and Stealth Craft Boats. We also want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning in, subscribing, sharing, and spreading the good word. If you haven't heard, go check us out at muskyfool.com. Have fun out there on the water, y'all.